in order to get therapy, you have to be able to receive some constructive criticism, or at least understand that you have something to do with the situation that you're in. A narcissist will not absorb that. You can give them oodles of evidence about things that they've done. It doesn't get in, because this psychological construct's job is to never feel bad, never let the child feel bad. So it will not ever accept that it's doing anything wrong, that it's being wrong, that it has any flaws. The narcissist cannot do that.
Hi, my name is Lawrence Strauss, and welcome to the Family Disappeared podcast. Today, we have a superstar of a guest, and I must tell you, I got so much out of the show and learned so much. And we have Randi Fine today, who's an expert on narcissistic abuse, and she's a recovery coach. And we talk about narcissism and what narcissism is and isn't, and how to identify it. And she introduces us to so many different ideas and concepts and ways to work with this and ways to work with ourselves. It's just phenomenal. And she's incredibly resourceful and have so much experience in this field that it really opens up my mind and my thoughts. And I've read so much and done so much, but talking to an expert like this is like, wow, this is a meal, right? We got meat, potatoes, vegetables, salad, it's like a buffet. Randi Fine gives us a buffet on narcissism. Okay, that's what I got. If you're new to the community, welcome. Great show to listen to. We have a great bunch of resources in the show notes, and my email address is in there, familydisappeared@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. Ask questions, suggest guests, suggest panels, whatever. And the YouTube is a great place to comment. Let us know what you're getting out of the show. Start a conversation. Like, share, please like, share, and let folks know what we're doing. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit and can use your support. We can't continue to do what we're doing without you. And more importantly, we can't deliver all the other resources that we have and we're talking about on the show. Like all these things we're talking about on the show, we want to have trainings and classes and stuff available so you can be implementing this in so many different levels on your life. And we want to open that door so people don't necessarily have to do meetings or the Family Hope Project. They can come in through a door of just foundational training. So thanks for coming out to play. Let's jump into the show. I remember having a conversation with my oldest daughter, and this was at a time I was struggling with chronic pain and in a lot of pain, and I was actually thinking about committing myself on a 5150 hold, which is like a 3-day hold where you're just like out of your mind. And I was in so much pain I could barely function from minute to minute, and I didn't know what to do. And I was having a conversation with my daughter, and I wasn't getting what I wanted from her. And I told her that how narcissistic and how selfish and how self-centered she was, and I couldn't see that I couldn't see that at the time, that she was just a little girl trying not to die, and that I was throwing around the word narcissism because I hear it all the time, and I didn't really know what it meant, and that it would have been hurtful. And Randi unpacks some of the stuff and gives us a different vocabulary and a different appreciation for the vocabulary that we are using. Let's jump into the show. So Randi, we're so grateful to have you on the show, and some of our audience was probably familiar with you and some is not. So if you could please just go ahead and introduce yourself to the community, who you are, what you do, and any other pieces or parts that you'd like to share with the community as an introduction.
Sure. My name is Randi Fine. I am a narcissistic abuse expert and a recovery coach worldwide. I am the author of the book Close Encounters of the Worst Kind, The Narcissistic Abuse Survivor's Guide to Healing and Recovery, which is available on Amazon. And there's also a companion workbook with that. And there's also a memoir where I talk about how I grew up with narcissistic abuse and what the side effects of that are. I've been a podcast host for over 12 years on A Fine Time for Healing, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think you also do some help with recovery, like one-on-one stuff. Do you do that as well?
Well, I do. That's the coaching, the recovery coaching. Yes.
It's so great to have you on the show. And narcissism and narcissistic abuse and stuff is such a huge part of the conversation in our community. And could you define that for folks that are maybe hearing this for the first time, or maybe just your definition, just so we know when we're entering into our conversation what we're talking about?
Sure. So when I talk about a narcissist or narcissism, I am talking about a personality disorder. I'm not talking about an inflated sense of self. I'm not talking about somebody who likes to look at themselves in the mirror or likes to boast about who they are or feels good who they are. I'm talking about a personality disorder, a very serious personality disorder that is as close to sociopathy and psychopathy as you can get. So a lot of times when people think of narcissism, they think, okay, well, we hear so much about this and they call everybody a narcissist. That's not what I'm doing. I'm talking about people who have a personality, a diagnosable personality disorder that will never get better.
Thank you for that. And you mentioned two words in there just for some clarification, sociopathy and something else. Can you tell us what that means?
So when you think about psychopaths and sociopaths, which falls under the heading of antisocial personality disorder, that's what I'm talking about. So when you think about a psychopath, you sort of get the feeling of how serious that is. And it's not somebody you really want to deal with. And you also know that there's no leverage with that person, okay? So someone with narcissistic personality disorder is almost the same thing. This is not a full-blown, sense of self. This is not just an ego thing. It is a personality disorder. And these people have no ability to love, no ability to empathize. And they don't see people as people. They see people as things. They objectify people. Their MO is to abuse because they use people to what I call feed off of. They need what's called narcissistic supply, and that's adoration, admiration, and attention. And it's something that they need 24/7, insatiably. They never stop needing it, and so they feed on other people to get this need met.
Thank you for clarifying that. And if I'm looking at this feeding kind of technique and I'm applying it to kind of like more of a family system, when one parent is needing a child to regulate their nervous system, they're actually feeding on that child emotionally. And would you consider that to be narcissistic abuse?
Yes. Now, every narcissist in a divorce situation or a separation situation where there's a child, everyone will alienate without exception. The reason they do that is because narcissists must control their victims, targets, whatever you want to call the people. And when they can no longer control you within a relationship such as marriage or, any kind of committed relationship, they have to control how others see you. Hence, they use the children. They program the children. They download all this information about the good parent, the targeted parent, being a bad person, never having loved the child, being abusive to the child, and whatnot.
Right. So they're feeding on the children, and I'm guessing they're feeding on the children because if they don't feed on the children, they feel like they're going to die. They feel like it's a crisis, and this is the only way they know how to navigate the world. Would that be accurate to say?
Right. It is a survival skill. Well, I don't want to call it a skill. Let's call it a survival tactic, because I don't call anything narcissists do as skill. I don't label them as skills. But what they're doing is a person with narcissistic personality disorder, they are a false self, which is a psychological construct of a human mind, meaning that they are not really operating from a full working human mind, okay? They're very, very limited. But the false self's construct is made in order to protect the true self, which is a self-loathing child, to never let that child feel another thing like that again. So the false self takes over for the true self, and you will never see the true self again. But all this predatory and parasitical behavior is in an effort to get this narcissistic supply, and the narcissistic supply keeps them from going to this self-loathing place. But it is insatiable, 24/7. In every waking moment, they need it, and they need it again and again and again.
That's a fascinating piece that I haven't heard before, where they're splitting off into this false self because they can't tolerate the feelings of this needy child part of themselves that never got attended to. And this is how they decide to navigate the world or whatever it is. It's just, well, that's crazy.
Yeah, what it really is a maladaptive coping mechanism on steroids. So like children in these environments, not all children in an abusive environment will develop NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. Children in these environments, their subconscious mind steps in and gives them some way to deal with the threat or the lack of love or whatever they're experiencing. So some kids will become pleasers. Some will try to make themselves invisible. Some kids dissociate. They just sort of disappear when they're hurting. Some kids become rebellious. The child who becomes the narcissist is making a permanent decision to never experience that life again. The other children, these maladaptive coping mechanisms, they will use them in childhood, and they probably will begin to use them in adulthood, but they won't work because they're not effective in adulthood. So they will have to find other strategies for coping with life. But the child who becomes the narcissist has made a permanent change. They will never come back.
That's a staggering thing that you're saying when you use the word permanent. That doesn't seem, when I'm thinking about it, possible that someone's going to permanently make this decision if they go through therapy and they actually do a lot of interpersonal work. You're saying that from your experience, they don't come back to their actual authentic self.
No. So there's certain traits of somebody with NPD. One of the traits is that they cannot see that there's anything wrong with them. They cannot accept that there's anything wrong with them. They have no sense of who they are, okay? So in order to get therapy, you have to be able to receive some constructive criticism, or at least understand that you have something to do with the situation that you're in. A narcissist will not absorb that. You can give them oodles of evidence about things that they've done. It doesn't get in, because this psychological construct's job is to never feel bad, never let the child feel bad. So it will not ever accept that it's doing anything wrong, that it's being wrong, that it has any flaws. The narcissist cannot do that. So this is why it's a permanent thing, because in this effort to keep this child from hurting, they lose many, many things. And one of them is their humanity, their ability to empathize, and they don't have a discretion of what's right and wrong. They're always right. You're always wrong.
I've had that experience. And there's so much in what you just said. I want to touch bases on a couple of things that you said. One of them, this narcissistic supply. So if a child is being used by a narcissist to regulate their nervous system, is how I describe it. When that narcissist stops using the child, that's also a control mechanism, because then the child is like craving them to use them. It becomes kind of like a feeding and a need to be fed on. Is that accurate?
That's actually one perspective. That is accurate. Really what's happening, though, is you have a child. Children want the love of both parents. They really know deep down inside who the unconditional loving parent is. They don't work to get that parent's love. They assume it's there. The parent who they know, maybe it's not a conscious knowing, but they know it. The parent who does not give them unconditional love has a lot more pull, because that child needs to work for their love, and the child will do anything, because to admit that that parent has flaws can just crash the child's entire world. They don't want to see that. Now, there are some children that grow up in these environments that see that parent exactly for who they are, and they don't get caught up in alienation. But children who do invest a tremendous amount of themselves in trying to keep this relationship with this disordered parent going. And I'm sure you've heard of psychological splitting. Often they will psychologically split, meaning that they go into all, black and white thinking. So the narcissistic parent is all good, and the targeted parent or the alienated parent is all bad. And they are so invested in this that they don't want to look at the fact that that parent doesn't love them. They cannot accept that fact. It will do them in. It will cause psychosis.
That's a pretty strong statement too. And again, getting back to this, like even like what I've witnessed is I've witnessed parents withdrawing love in order to control the children. And then once the children come back, then the whole level of narcissism just amplifies and continues and moves on. But it's really used, I've seen as a lever. As they move away, it's just shut off and there's no love left. And then the child has to come back because, like you're saying, they're going to fall apart, go into psychosis, lose their full identity.
Right. So, and what's important to understand in this is that narcissistic indoctrination begins the day children are born. It does not begin the day that the parents are splitting up, okay? It doesn't begin the day that the child is able to recognize the conversations that it's having. It begins in day one. So what the narcissistic parent will do is they will use that giving love and withdrawing love with little children, with babies, to train that child that they better do what is needed to get that love. And by the time they get to be a certain age, it's so instilled in them. Now, not every child will fall for this. Some children can see it from the beginning. They never fall for it. But generally, the child who is the most sensitive will be the one who will fall into this trap. And the narcissist always will prey on the most sensitive child.
And is the most sensitive child traditionally the firstborn?
Nope, it's whatever they can take. Okay? So they watch these kids grow up and they know. They have a radar. They can just detect who they can manipulate and who they cannot. And narcissists have a way of talking, a way of their mannerisms, their inflections, the way that they look at you. These can all give you messages about what they mean, okay? So children, being with this parent from day one, they know what this parent is meaning, whether they're saying it or they're not saying it. The child who is the most sensitive, what's happening there is that the alienating parent is making that child responsible for their very happiness, for their care. They're parentifying the child. The child is made to take care of them. And the child is made to believe that they are the only one that can do this. And without them, that parent will just curl up and die. So that's a huge burden for a child.
Wow, yeah, and as you're saying it, I'm nodding for anyone that's not watching the video, and it's totally resonating with me. And just those control mechanisms and those little innuendos and those little facial statements, and also with the narcissist always centering themselves and becoming the victim. And if they don't have that supply, they're going to die, and everyone's kind of like guilted into that.
And a sensitive child they'll grab onto that because now this parent who they somehow know does not unconditionally love them, they want to give everything to this parent because they want that parent's love. So it's a trap. There's so many things that are going on here. It's so multi-level, multifaceted, and it's very complicated. But what it induces in the child is torture. So in their mind, they have this one parent that's forcing them to behave a certain way and relying on them to take care of them. And they're also being told the parent they've loved all their life, they can't have a relationship with. And so it causes this tug of war in their head. These children are tortured, which is why they have anxiety disorders. You'll see things like skin picking and, eating disorders and all kinds of things that children will do in order to be able to deal with the pain that they're experiencing. They will get into drugs. They will get into alcoholism. Some of them get promiscuous. There's so many things that they're doing at this time with this tug of war going on in their head. It is the most cruel thing anybody can do to a child.
Yeah, and I'm curious because I've seen this manifest in several different folks, these kids that I know, like OCD tendencies and needing to control stuff and do different things in certain orders in order just to get through the day. I'm presuming that's one of those things. It's not an eating disorder. It's not some of these other things, but it's the same class, right?
Exactly. Some of them are hoarders. Yeah, it's all in an attempt to have some control over their life.
I love that you pointed out that this starts at day one, because so many families are like, no, I didn't see this coming. This didn't happen. It never existed. And I'm a firm believer actually that it starts in vitro from my perspective. Like the mom in vitro is really needing something from the kid. They're touching the belly. They're feeding off the child, even in vitro, even before it comes out. And getting them acclimated to this feeding mechanism is what I think.
Yeah, it does. And another thing that happens, I'm trained in polyvagal theory, and that's the vagus nerve. And with polyvagal theory, whatever the mother's state and level of anxiety or her nervous system, whatever state that's in, when the child is in utero, that is what the child comes out regulated to. So a child in a mother like that never regulates to a normal level, which means that they come into this world with anxiety. They're already there. They don't know what calm is.
They co-regulate to the mother. That's wonderful. I love you sharing a little bit of the polyvagal theory, because that's wonderful, and it's so real, and it ties everything in together and gives people actually a word and an understanding of why this child's coming in enmeshed, codependent, fused, whatever word we want to use. So some kids are more susceptible. They're a little bit, more vulnerable. And if there's multiple kids in a family system, initially, this is a question. Initially, I'm guessing one kid is the primary source of food or sustenance for the narcissistic personality disorder. And as time goes on, other kids might get drawn into that same system of feeding because the narcissist needs more food, or because those kids are fighting for the narcissist's love. I don't know. They're separate things. It might be the same thing I'm saying, but what do you think?
So a narcissistic parent assigns roles to their children. The roles that they assign are their golden child, their scapegoat, and often there's an invisible child or a neglected child, okay? There's only one golden child at a time. There can only be one golden child at a time, and that child is elevated to a ridiculous height. That is the narcissist parent's mirror of perfection for themselves. That child can do no wrong, because if the child does wrong, the parent is wrong, and they can't be wrong. But the scapegoat child, what they are is basically the dumpster for all the angst of the narcissist. So because they can't internalize anything negative about themselves, everything that they feel, everything that they experience has got to get off of them and somewhere else. So the scapegoat child is the dumping ground for all of that. Then you have the invisible child. Now, not every family will have an invisible child. In my family, we had one of each. But the invisible child they're just not noticed. They're not cared for. Often the parent will do enough to make it look okay to the outside world, because that's very important for them. But these children don't get the same kind of medical attention that the other children will get. They're often just ignored. Like I have a sister, well, she's passed, but I had a sister that was the invisible child, the ignored child. And she said, she was 5 years older than me. When I came into this world, my mother literally stopped looking at her and touching her and never did again. Never did again. I was the golden child. I was that child elevated to a ridiculous height. I was the golden child. And it's very unusual for a golden child to be able to come out of this with clarity. Usually, the golden child, because of what causes NPD, golden children often become narcissistic or they develop the personality disorder because, well, they're objectified, but they are put on such a high pedestal about who they are that this inflation of self can make them eventually become narcissistic.
Yeah, and again, a wonderful point. And just to share a little bit of my story, when I first got separated, you would think that I'd concentrate all my energy on the kids and stuff. But when I got separated, I just concentrated all my energy on my ex-wife and trying to get the relationship back. I triangulated with her into trying to get hold of my kids and get communication with them and stuff. And it's funny, I was totally in that feeding cycle with my ex. I needed to feed her. I needed to take care of her. I needed to give her that narcissistic supply. And when she removed me as a vehicle to get that narcissistic supply, my level of anxiety, panic attacks for a while was like off the charts. That's what drove me into this path of recovery and self-development and stuff, was her stopping feeding on me as a 36-year-old adult. You know, it's fascinating.
That's so sad.
It's wonderful that there's some research and folks like you out there that are letting us know about this, so people that aren't this far along the path can make different decisions. Like if I would have had information, I would have made different decisions at that time. And I want to go a little bit further back. Like, for my experience, I was attracted to my ex-wife originally because she needed someone to kind of like take care of her in that way. And that was very familiar from my mother. My mother wasn't a full-blown narcissist like that, but she needed me to take care of her in vitro. So then I went out and found a partner that needed me to do that. And it happened to be, someone with like quite a bit of trauma, I'm guessing, for them to get to this place of narcissism and no return. But it's also empowering for me to know that there's something in my history that can change from the people that I pick, and that I do have some responsibility here.
You do and you don't. Okay, so when you are targeted by a narcissist, it is a 100% victimization situation, all right? It's a bait and switch. You are not shown the person you end up with. They don't show you their true self, okay? So you fall for somebody that you think is your soulmate, wonderful, perfect, adoring. They love everything about you. And it's very difficult unless you know the red flags to look for, which I put out there all the time, because you have to know what to look for when you meet these people. There's some very clear things that they will do. But once a narcissist captures you, they're like black widow spiders. It's like they're sitting there and you're there, and it's like, they come and they get you. Once you're captured by a narcissist, brainwashing can happen very quickly. They can take your mind over within days, weeks, months. So what people don't understand is narcissists are the most dangerous creatures that walk this earth. They have the ability to burrow into a person's psyche and take it over very, very quickly. So they use tactics, and one of the tactics that they use is psychological warfare. So you hear about prisoners of war, and you hear about how they're kept up all night, the lights are on, there's noise, they're repetitive words, things, messages in their head over and over and over. The narcissist uses psychological warfare. So they do a lot of very serious control tactics that take your mind over. So you may have submitted in the beginning because this was a great person for you. But in a very short amount of time, you lost your choice. You lost your ability to pull away from this person. Once they have you, they have you.
Well, you mentioned something about, do you have a set of red flags or common characteristics that you share with people. Can you share some of those with us quickly while we're on this portion?
Wow. Randi is a rock star, super cool, super fun to chat with, and I'm really appreciative to what she brought to the conversation. Very different contextually to the other conversations that we've been having, because it's really hyper focused in this particular area of narcissistic abuse, and I loved it. And the second part of the show is just as powerful, if not more powerful. If you're new, I hope you enjoyed that. My email's in the show notes, familydisappeared@gmail.com. Let me know what you thought. What parts of the conversation would you have liked to hear more details on? What did we miss out on? What else would you like to hear? Are there any other experts or any other parts of the struggle that we're not talking about? Let us know. Show notes, great stuff. Thanks for coming out and play. In case no one's told you yet today, I love you. And yeah, and it feels good. It feels good to be able to love. There was a long time there that I couldn't even feel into love. And I feel spacious right in this moment today. And tomorrow it might change. I might not like you, but today I do. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for coming out to play.